Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. You have loved our next guest in things like Arrested Development, as the voice of Batman and Lego and Batman, on Parks and Recreation, on his show Flaked on Netflix, Lemony Snicket on Netflix. He's been in so many things that we love. And now, as much as you love to see him play the superhero, you can see him play the supervillain in the new movie Teen Titans Go to the Movies, which opens July 27th. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Do you know what makes a real hero? It's not the costumes, the gadgets, the cool powers. It's having your own movie. And that has always been my dream. What are you doing?
Just giving the people what they want.
Our movie's not about Wonder Woman, it's about us, the Teen Titans.
No one wants to see us, fool.
Wonder Woman inspires people.
And we do not.
Yes, Wonder Woman is great, but...
I love Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman!
Narrator guy, just do your thing.
From the creators of Teen Titans Go.
Yeah, the balloon man.
It's about courage.
Titans, go!
It's about action. It's the superhero movie to end all superhero movies. Hopefully.
He farted.
That wasn't a fart. That was just air leaving my butt.
Which is a fart.
Teen Titans Go to the movies. Because if Aquaman can get a movie, anyone can.
Everybody, please welcome the great Will Arnett.
Thank you.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey. Thanks so much for coming back. Good to see you.
Oh, man, it's good to be here. I love that you guys have taken the whole build motif to the next level with the construction trucks outside. Those are props, right?
That's exactly what that is.
Oh, man, that's really
We
good.
like to keep it real behind it.
It's on brand.
Time,
It's
yeah.
very on brand.
In case people forget what they're watching, they see people building.
Yeah,
It's
like
called
build,
Build.
yeah.
It's really, yeah. I'm glad that you were able to pick up on that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My idea, really, my idea. My builders, those are my builders out there.
Sure.
My union guys.
Yeah.
Will, you are credited as a producer on this movie. You have executive produced a ton of stuff before, but you were actually a producer on this.
Yeah.
What did that entail for you, and how did that happen?
Well, so I came by this show because as a parent, you hear a lot of shows in the kind of the background, and oftentimes they're super annoying. And then I was in the other room, and I heard my sons were watching the show, and I heard a couple jokes, and I was like, what was that? Like, what are you guys watching? And I came in, they were watching the show, Teen Titans Go, and I started watching with them, and I was really taken with how funny the show was.
Oh, these are actually good jokes,
These
not
are
just
actually
things
great
yelling.
Jokes. Yeah, these are great jokes. Who are these guys? So I was working on something at the time, and I called over to their office of Teen Titans Go and to a guy over at Warner Animation, TV Animation, and I was like investigating Aaron and Michael, the writers. And I was like, so what's their deal? And he said, well, let's go out for lunch or whatever. And then he said, listen, I know you're trying to poach these writers, and it's not going to happen. But
Was that your intention to poach them for something you were working on?
Yes, he was right. I was trying to poach them. But he said, we want to make a movie, and they were at Warner TV Animation. And he said, we want to be able to make a movie at the studio. And, I've been involved with a bunch of the movies over there over the last few years through the Lego stuff. And he said, would you come aboard and help us put this together? And I said, gladly. Yeah.
Now, you have two sons, right, that are about 7, 8 years old, I think?
Yeah, almost 8 and almost 10.
Almost 8 and almost 10. What was it like the first time you were able to show them a movie or a TV show that you had voiced, that you were a part of, that you knew that they might like?
It was a cool experience. I guess it was trying to think the first thing that they saw in that sort of animated world was probably like Horton Hears a Who. I think that was the first one that they saw. And then they saw Ratatouille. And Despicable Me. I'm not just listing my credits, by the way.
You were in, oh my God, those are
yeah. Hold your applause well held. But then we got into Lego Movie, which they really enjoyed, and they were kind of starting to get old enough to really enjoy that process and enjoy the fact that I was doing it and come and see. So when we started making Lego Batman, I remember it was like a Saturday, and I went to record some stuff with Chris McKay, I think last time I was here was with Chris. And Chris and I were recording on a Saturday at Warner Brothers in Burbank. And, it was a Saturday, so I had my kids were with me, and they were just kind of goofing around and eating candy like they are here in the back room. And then Chris said, we got these voices of these orphans that your boys should come and do it. And I was like, yes, great. So we got them, put them to work, and they started to voice it and actually became part of the movie. And that was a really, really awesome experience.
What was that like for them when they saw the movie and they saw their voices?
Oh my God, they were
their
psyched.
Voices in it.
They were psyched. Yeah, it was. I think it was a really cool thing to get to be part of something that they're legitimate fans of, yeah, I think they were a little blown away by it.
Now, do you just generally enjoy sort of voicing characters in kids' movies? And I mean, I would say kids/adult movies. Most of the stuff that you've done has been able to straddle both worlds a little bit. Or does it have to do with finding stuff that your kids can watch as well?
Well, I think there are a few elements to it. I think that in this case, it's just about working with guys who are really talented, funny comedy writers. And I love just working with them, and I really am deeply tickled by what they do. And coupled, with that, I like to do stuff that my kids can enjoy. That's important. It just enriches the experience if I can do something that they can watch and really enjoy. But I also like the idea of doing stuff that works on a couple different levels, so that you can go and do a comedy that kids find funny for a reason, but also there's another step to some of the jokes that, it might be more subversive than you think it is at first glance. That to me is kind of interesting, trying to bury jokes or themes within the film.
The last Lego Batman was wildly subversive, I thought, for a kids movie or kids/adult movie.
Yeah.
When you sign on to produce this, I mean, did you work with the writers on the script or anything, or is it just more like I'll be a voice in it and I'll help get it made? Like how involved did you want to be?
Well, I didn't write any of it. Those guys wrote it, and they certainly don't need my help. But I worked closely with everybody, with those guys, and with Pete, who also directed it. Who's responsible for a lot of the music in the show, and that's really one of the hallmarks of the show, and we've carried that on and heightened it in the movie, is some of the great music, original songs that are not just catchy tunes, but also quite hilarious, and also continue to tell the story.
He writes the music too, mostly?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, it's really, they're such a talented bunch of dudes, and it's so fun to be around that kind of talent. But I did, as we went through and we pitched the story to the studio, and there's also a lot, because there are a lot of DC. These are all DC characters, and so it's a process as you go through and work with the studio and work with DC.
Like DC Studios and Warner Studios and all that stuff,
DC's
right?
Within Warner. That's all kind of part under the umbrella of the bigger company, but you got to make sure that everybody's happy with what you're doing and where you're going. So you've got to get signed off by everybody, which makes sense. It's their IP, and so you go in there and we keep, it was over a matter of probably 6 months that we went to the studio, then to DC, then back to the studio, pitching, storyboarding, how we want it to look, et cetera, and rehearsed our pitch and got it down to what we want it to be, and then once we got the sort of the green light to the actual green light.
You're doing 6 months of writing and pitching and storyboarding. Until you get
by the way,
green
I'm not
light.
drawing any storyboards.
I know, yeah.
But yeah, probably 6 months, I guess, of like just trying to fine tune what it's going to be, and then start working on the script.
It's one of those stories that I realize, we're talking about a children's movie right now, so maybe it's not the time to go into the story of how the sausage gets made, but I find the pitch process so fascinating when it comes to movies, because usually you just hear I pitched it and it got greenlit, and no one really hears that like people usually work for free for about 6 months to a year until eventually like maybe a green light comes at the end of it and everybody kind of gets paid and gets to make the product that they've been working on.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you find that if you ask most people I know who are kind of doing what I do, are working at any given time on a few different things that will never really bear any fruit in terms of being made. personally have been working on another script with my partner Mark Chappell, who did Flaked with me as my writing partner. We've been working on this script and doing various rewrites for probably going on 8 months now. We don't know if it's going to get made, and that's just one of about 5 things that he and I are working on at any given time. And it's a lot of free work, but it's also stuff that you like to do, and it's really, so you're kind of throwing a lot of stuff out there, and hopefully somebody's going to go, all of a sudden somebody will come back and say, oh, that thing that you guys wrote, now somebody wants to do that, and you have like 80 things kind of going at once, but it's very satisfying.
Yeah. So what was it like for
80's a lot, by the way. I'm not saying 80, but...
What was it like for you to get to play the villain rather than the hero this time around?
Super fun. Yeah, because villains can kind of get away with saying a lot of stuff, and they don't have to be redeeming because they're villains.
Right.
Nobody's like, oh, don't say that because that doesn't. It's like, no, he's a villain.
So. Batman gets away with saying some pretty ridiculous stuff as well.
Yes.
He's kind of his own villain at times.
Maybe
his own worst enemy.
I won't admit to that, but maybe. Yeah, but it's always trying to find in all these roles. I mean, certainly with Slade, one of the things that was interesting to me was finding a way to create a villain and working with those guys to create a villain who, he's maybe not as confident as he comes across. He's annoyed by the Teen Titans. He's frustrated by them. He's kind of doubting his ability to conquer them. And that to me is really funny.
He's not as confident as he comes across. That is like a kind of a hallmark Will Arnett character in a lot of ways.
Maybe.
Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think that, it's something that I can relate to. It's maybe it's my upbringing. Maybe it's partially being Canadian. There's a kind of a notion of don't take yourself too seriously. And so I think that always kind of keeping those seeds of, it's not really keeping it real, but that idea of like, don't buy into your own shit too much. And so when I love characters that are really confident and also pretty stupid. It's just an intoxicating combination to me.
Well, it's like a pure comedy conflict right there. It's like immediately,
Yeah.
as soon as you step in front of the camera, you have a conflict.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly right. So when you
not as smart as you think you are, done.
Yeah, and so a villain is a perfect guy, right? So a villain is the guy who comes in and he's going to destroy everything, and you always see I'm going to conquer the world, or he's just like in Star Wars, let's say, for instance, he's just the most awful person, and the room gets colder when he walks in and all that kind of stuff. But then if you cut him like laying down how he's going to destroy everything, and then you see him like in the bathroom going like, oh my God, did they buy it? That to me is really funny, because I think that's something that we all suffer from. It's really relatable, right? I think it's just like a very sort of human quality.
Well, that's so much of where the humor with Batman came from, right? I mean, there was that great moment of him microwaving a piece of food, right?
Yeah.
And just standing there watching it, which is a very real thing that you never see a superhero do.
No, and Batman's a great example because, in all the movies that have led up to it, and even since, he's Bruce Wayne at home, and then as soon as he gets downstairs and he puts the cowl on, he's talking like this. All of a sudden, you're like, why is he talking like that right now? So then we thought, well, it's really funny to see him talking like that all the time when he's microwaving his lobster thermidor, when he's just trying to figure out his TV, when he's talking to Siri, whatever. It's funny to see him in that voice.
Do you, for those movies, and I think for this movie, you have to be fairly, to write them, and I think to really work on them, you'd have to be fairly aware of the mythology of all of these characters and where they kind of come from. Yeah. How invested in that are you, and how much do you know about those things, or do you kind of leave it to the writers?
Yeah, I always say I do what I always call just leave it to the nerds.
Yeah.
Sorry, full stop. That was it. No. Yeah, I don't really kind of get into that too much. I was thrown into it once I started working on Lego Batman, which was, I don't know, whatever it was, 6-7 years ago when I first started working, maybe even 8. All of a sudden I found myself in the middle of this kind of, Batman world and people asking me questions about, origin story stuff and all these other offshoots. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And when you say that, people are like, what? You don't know? And then there's the battle between DC and Marvel. And it's a lot of it is just like, people with a lot of time on their hands.
I always feel bad for actors who are in like big Marvel movies and DC movies who, when doing the panels, get asked all these questions about the mythology of their character, and they're just like, I just try to think about my character and his internal story. And it's like, good for you. You don't know anything about it. You're just doing your job.
Yeah. No, and I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know anything, but I don't know anything about a lot of things. But it is that, like, I don't know. You can't really win at that. You know what I mean? Even when we were doing Arrested Development over the years, we've had a million people who go. I remember Mitch and I were doing a panel or something, and somebody said, "Well, I think that Job did this, and then Michael and the thing, blah blah blah." And Mitch and I kind of looked at him, and Mitch was like, "Yeah, that's actually wasn't the intention, but that's a great idea." And he created it,
At a certain point, you just have to leave it to the viewers and the fans to kind of have it
which
their
is
own
great.
way.
They can have their own experience, and they get to, enjoy it on a bunch of different levels and how it relates to some other universe and stuff. That's cool.
No, a number of years ago, I think probably like 30, 40 years ago at this
I don't know if I was born
point,
then.
Nicolas Cage was going to play Superman in a movie, and we finally get him as Superman in this, right?
Yeah.
That's my fanboy. I have like a Nicolas Cage fanboy knowledge.
Yeah.
That's about all.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm with you. I'm a Nicolas Cage fanboy myself. And it was such a, I don't know if it was a long shot, but just the idea of, when we asked him to do it, that he actually came back and said that he would. His son's name is Kal-El, and who's part of the movie. He has a voice in the movie as well. And when he came back and told us that he was a fan of the movie, of the show, and
Cage?
Yeah.
Amazing.
He liked Teen Titans, and that was so exciting. And of course, because of his, like you said, he for a long time had been circling the property, and he has, he has a very well documented love of Superman. The fact that this is the first time that he's played Superman in a film is absolutely titillating to me.
I laugh not because it's funny that Nicolas Cage likes Teen Titans, but because I immediately hear him saying that he likes Teen Titans, and I hear the voice doing it, and it makes me very happy.
Do the voice.
Nope. I'm not an actor that gets forced into impressions on a regular basis. Okay. Did you get to be in the booth with him or anything, or was it?
No.
No. Usually not, right?
No, I don't like to work with other people. I'm just
That's
in the
where all
dark.
this voice acting has come from recently.
By the way, I'm kidding, but I'm not. No, I am kidding. But it is, you do spend a lot of time by yourself. And I actually do enjoy sometimes that process. We do sometimes work with people, other people in the Lego universe. We've done it. Chris Pratt and Elizabeth Banks and I did it a bunch of times. And Zach and I did a little bit in Lego Batman, Rosario and stuff. But oftentimes you're by yourself.
Now, you got 2 seasons of Flaked, right, on Netflix, and is that the end of Flaked, or?
Well, that's a question I get asked a lot on like social media, and I've thought about like, am I going to like put out a statement, because I get asked like every day, probably 3 times a day, but I will say it here to very little fanfare. We will not be making any more Flaked. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, Flaked was such a different tone than any of the other shows or movies that you normally do. It was much more subtle, and it was much more about this guy's spiritual journey with like a little bit of humor sprinkled into it.
Yeah.
And you said that you and your writing partner have another project that you've been working on for 8 months. Is that more in line with the tone of something like Flaked, a sort of a personal show?
No, it's not actually. It's a departure from my departure. So it's like it's like a connecting flight, I guess, because it's 2 departures. And again, well held on the applause. So
I like that you held and then it was held. Yeah.
No, just in the off chance that somebody else. It's a very different. It's a very different thing that we're doing. It's much more of a kind of a the type of film that's more reminiscent of the '80s films that they don't really make anymore. Part of the thing is
It's a movie.
It's a movie, yeah.
Oh, cool.
And it's much more. It's kind of like I described it the other day as Romancing the Stone meets The Hangover meets Indiana Jones. And it's an adventure film, and it's about a tale of a family, but it's not a family film. It's a R-rated. And they don't make movies like this anymore because they make a lot of, frankly, they make a lot of superhero movies. But now that we're going to end superhero movies,
This is the end of it.
this is the superhero movie to end all superhero movies.
How hard is it to get a movie made like the one that you're talking about? Because when I watch movies from that period of time, the 80s and 90s, you do get more movies just about people that were considered broad adventure movies or comedies. Like, I watched Kindergarten Cop recently, and I was kind of like, this would actually never be made now. This is way too costly.
Yeah, never. Well, just never be made because look, the system is set up so that it's all about a consistent stream of revenue. So making a film that's potentially just a one-off, that is, even if it were to do well, they're looking at making a sort of a long-term investment in something that will continue to kick off revenue forever. So. And God bless them. They're in business to be in business, so that's okay. But one of the casualties of that are films that can kind of stand on their own and just be a story and something that you just kind of enjoy.
Which is so interesting because I think audiences really want those movies as well.
I hope so. I sure hope so.
I think but audiences want characters that are not necessarily superheroes sometimes, who are going through sort of extraordinary situations.
Yeah, and I think that, for me, we live in a time right now where it does seem like people are getting profoundly bummed out on a daily level, and we're inundated with news, and people are watching things, and I think that what we need is, for me, I've kind of realized that I just have to, that laughter is clearly the best medicine for this environment. And it doesn't necessarily mean going head on at the things I disagree with and attacking it through humor or whatever. I actually mean divorcing myself from owning all of that kind of energy that's coming from these, by the way, non-debates, all this kind of ugliness from every angle, and just actually moving towards things that are enjoyable and kind of, and I think that that's going to be the sort of the tonic that we need, is just pure laughter and not constantly devolving into some kind of mudslinging.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get some questions from the audience. What do we have here? Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
So you play a villain in this movie, and you were talking a bit about villains. So I was just wondering, who's your favorite villain, just in general?
My favorite villain. I would probably say Berlusconi out of Italy. Do you know him? No. I would say he's by the way a great villain. No, I don't know. There have been a few villains. Obviously, the Joker. I really liked Zach's Joker in Lego Batman because he also was very flawed in a different way, and I found that to be very, very interesting. Yeah.
Next question.
Hi. My question for you is, as an actor, what's the difference between doing animated works like Bojack Horseman and Teen Titans, or live action with Arrested Development, Series of Unfortunate Events, things like that?
The animation process, as we talked about, is such a longer process. So they don't animate and then you come in and record. You record and then they animate to what you've done, and then they come back and then you look at some of that stuff and they start to put the film together very slowly. What I like is that you have time. In the case of Lego Batman, say almost 2 years. Time to go back and constantly change the story and fine-tune and find the things that work. And you don't have that luxury when you're doing something live action. You shoot it, you might get reshoots, but for the most part, you shoot it and what you've got is what you've got. We have the luxury to go back and change it and also do multiple takes. when you're working on a set, you've got the camera guys and you've got the thing, you've got to go hair and makeup and the thing, and make sure everything's clear, and all that stuff takes time. And so when it gets to the actual shooting, you sometimes don't have as much. Animated, you roll up, they turn the switch on, you start recording, and we can do takes that are 20 minutes long that'll have, 100 different options of lines and things that we can use in any given scene. And that's, an embarrassment of riches.
That's why the animated movies are so tight, story-wise. The story beats in animated movies, like the Lego Bat movies, like Teen Titans, they're so tight.
It's a real writer's venue. Yeah. It's a real writer's medium. It's a perfect, because what you get is, it is so tight, and it comes in it's such a great, it's like the closest or shortest distance between what the writer wrote and what you see on the screen there. And you can't, there's nowhere to hide in animation. It's there. So, you can't disguise it with a bunch of things. Like, it's either funny or it's not.
She mentioned Bojack Horseman. I love Bojack Horseman. You guys are coming back for another season soon, right?
Yes, we have a 5th season that's coming back in September, I think. I should know. I should be better about that, right?
I could be better. It's my job to know as well right now.
Yeah, wait. Yes, Sorry. You should know. God, that's so codependent of me to take it on myself. Do
you ever draw inspiration from sort of real life actors when you're thinking about BoJack Horseman? When I watch a show, I'm always kind of like, oh, they're doing this. BoJack's kind of like this person or like this person.
No, but it's funny. I went to a birthday dinner for a friend of mine in L.A. and Bob Saget was there, and whom I don't know, and I've hung out with him a couple times since. Nice guy, and he asked me. He said, "BoJack Horseman is not based on me, right?" And
I never thought him.
No, me neither. And I said, and neither did Raphael. And I was like, no, it's not.
I thought other cast members of Full House maybe, but not Saget, because Saget is a stand-up comedian and a writer, and he's got like a thing that he can lean on that is real talent.
Yeah. And
by the
way, you did not mean Dave Coulier.
No.
I think...
As well as a comedian, yes.
Yeah. But it's really not based on anybody in particular. And I don't really think of anybody, because he is a very specific guy, Horace unto himself, but there are a lot of truths in there, and I do maybe draw on, well, you always draw on kind of experiences, or real or imagined or otherwise, when you're doing anything, but not specifically any one person.
When you finish that season of BoJack, I don't know if you go and watch all the episodes yourself afterwards. Do you watch most of them?
Well, I watch most of them. I see them before they come out. I produce the show, and so but I don't really go back. Sorry, so I'm you have a question?
No, the question is, that
Sorry,
season,
question from right here. Yeah, go ahead.
That season where BoJack ends up sort of running with the horse. It's like running with the horses. It's so beautiful and unexpected and crazy for a show like that to go in that direction. What was that? What did that feel like as a producer and as the primary voice on that show, to be a part of something so innovative and at the same time kind of touching in a way that you would never expect?
Yeah, this show, I'm constantly inspired and in awe of Raphael Bob Waxberg. I'm in awe of his talent and how profound he is as a person. When we record the show, when I record with Raphael, and we do it alone. And Bojack is quite a tragic figure, and it is often a very kind of moving experience, and it's been strangely enough, because it's an animated show and we record it. It has been a show that has at times difficult to do.
Really?
Yeah, because the subject matter is so heavy, and we really, the writing is so good, and I find it very moving.
Was that something that you expected when you signed on to produce a show and got
No.
the pilot? Because it wasn't really, there's hints of that in the first season, but it's really the second where it drives that car even further,
Yeah. I think I said it before. No,
Do I move on?
No, it was not something I knew. Look, you knew that Raphael is a brilliant writer, and he's got a lot going on. But I think that once you get into a process and it starts to work and it starts to sort of compound and get better and deeper and whatever it's just really a function of how well it kind of worked. That we were able to kind of keep going into the direction, we just there's an episode in this new season. It's just a very original and again quite moving episode.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's unusual.
Let's get one more question.
Hi. I wanted to know since. There's a funny running gag in the movie where Slade is doing this thing called mind manipulation.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, have you ever used that on anybody else?
Why did you want to know that?
I don't know. Maybe. Because
the movie's so great?
Yeah.
Say it.
The movie's so great.
You can sit. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
That's my roommate, guys. Sorry. He, I bet.
Your roommate. That's your
roommate. Yeah. I've never tried mind manipulation. I mean, we all have, right? In a certain way. But the great thing about Slade's mind manipulation is how bad it is. It really just turns out to be a bunch of kind of like schoolyard tricks. But it's a great thing. We actually, when we're recording that, the first time Slade says, you'll be careful, whatever it is, be careful, you're going to, you'll be subject to my mind manipulation. And we kept on trying to find, like, what was the funniest way to introduce his big thing that he's got, his big sort of villain power. And we ended up, and it was Pete, one of the directors, who he suggested, because we kept kind of going further and further, and I ended up doing it to sound like I'm introducing like an NBA team, like, here they are, please welcome mind manipulation, it was like that, and it was just making us laugh, and I don't even know if it really reads in the movie, but it makes us laugh so much so that it's in there.
I just want to say it's so nice after all your success, you keep a roommate. That's really
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
I think that's great.
It's
more
great-ish.
for his benefit than.
But anyway.
He doesn't do the dishes, really.
No, he's a neat freak, and he's driving me crazy.
Will, congrats on the movie. I love it. Congrats on everything else as well. I can't wait for Bojack in September. Everybody give a big round of applause for Will Arnett.
Thank you.